Hello and welcome back to the CKM Red Rugby League channel. I'm Matty and this is Luke. And we're about to review round 5 of the NRL, minus one game because of a COVID scare. So if you'd like to see that video reviewed probably tomorrow, it'll be up on our YouTube channel. So go check that out. Cheeky plug there, but that'll do. How you doing, mate?
Not too bad, mate. We've got the coffee set up, ready to go. We've had a fresh shower. It's I would say beautiful day, but it's an ugly, overcast, grey, muggy day in Melbourne at the moment. So kind of glad I'm cooped up inside for this one. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm currently sat in a conservatory at 11:30 in Leeds. So life's about what I expected it to be honest.
I yearn for the day where we're somehow in the same time zone for one of these.
That'll be a long way off yet, but we'll get there eventually. Okay, so speaking of getting there eventually, we'll start with the Thursday night game, Brisbane versus Manly. We're off to a flyer already. Brisbane versus Manly. Manly going up 20 points to 18 over the Brisbane Broncos. Manly overturning a 14-point deficit to come back, win that one. Just how did the Broncos manage to let that one get away from them?
I don't know if it was the Broncos exactly letting it get away from them more than Manly deciding to show up halfway through the game. To Brisbane's credit, they came out screaming in the first half. Got up. I think it ended up being about 18-0.
Yeah,
I think they had 3 converted tries up, and then Manly decided at the start of the second half that they actually played like a team that we've seen them play this season. Yeah. Tell you what, Manly, the multi-killers of the week, just right off the bat. That's how you know it was going to be a bad week on the punt when Brisbane got up 18-0. 10 errors from the Broncos definitely didn't help. You compare that to Manly's 2. A lot of those in the second half, giving Manly a chance. And when you have players like Tommy Turbo just waiting for an opportunity to capitalise, you definitely can't let him have too many chances because he'll hurt you. Brisbane, to their credit, they had a good game plan. They targeted Funa over there on the wing. Xavier Coates basically looked like and reminded me of a very early mix of Greg Inglis and Israel Folau with how he was playing. He's that 6'5" tall target that if he gets a clean catch close to the line, you're not going to stop him. But after a while, I wouldn't say it stopped working, but the effect wasn't as good as in the first half. And once Manly were able to get their way around that, their forwards started to move. It wasn't pretty, but Manly got it done in the end.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the things I was going to mention as well, to Manly's credit. At halftime, they clearly picked out the fact that the Coates-Funa battle on that edge was a complete mismatch. Coates was winning every single high contest and just batting it back for Stags. It's how the first try came about. So what they did is they just basically said, right, okay, let him have it. It's similar to what Super League clubs did with Ryan Hall when he was on the wing for Leeds. He was unstoppable in the air. So they just let him have it. Let him have it and then deal with that from there. The Broncos didn't manage to get many offloads away as a result of that, and it completely killed their game plan. And that's what happens when you come with one game plan and one game plan only. And they were hoping that the forward pack could be able to get through the middle, but Adam Fanua-Blake had a huge game, really rattled off the meters, got through the minutes as well.
And that's without Marty Tapau for a lot of it too, who's going to be out for a couple of weeks with a dislocated wrist. So it's a chance for one of the young forwards coming through for Manly to make a mark over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, big time loss with Tapau out.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a big spot to fill, and they've not got an easy few games coming up either, but we'll talk about that in the preview show, which we'll be filming tomorrow. So, yep. with that, then we'll move on to the Warriors Cowboys. That was a huge scoring game, 37-26 in favour of the Warriors. Again, we're seeing the consistency of the Warriors is killing teams off pretty quickly, completing 40 out of 46 sets, and then just getting to a kick and causing problems.
The Warriors are so consistently inconsistent that it pains me to put any money on Warriors games. This one killed my multi for the week. Just racking up the bad bets this week, but the Warriors just too classy. The Cowboys, granted, without Michael Morgan, his impact again missing in key points. Val Holmes injured after about 5 minutes. Was able to stay on and score a try, but you could just tell he wasn't feeling it. The debutant, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. I'm just going by the hammer on this one. Had an absolute barnstormer of the game. Taumalolo, poor by his standards, but still 50 tackles and 130 running meters. You can't discredit the effort with what's probably an 80% leg. The Warriors, though, just too good. They attacked the edges. Wore down attacked the edges early on, wore down the middle, and then as that happened, they just started pushing through the middle. And I mean, what can you say when a team completes 40 out of 46 sets? They have 4 forced dropouts, and for the most part, the penalties that they're conceding are they're not ones that are costing them too much ground because they're coming off kicks into the corner. I mean, it's incredibly hard to come back from that.
Yeah. The Warriors kicking game, as we mentioned, they're 40 out of 46 sets, and then getting to a kick, they were making good meters as well. And the biggest thing that they were dealing with the grubbers, the little chips in behind. They scored, I think it was Patrick Herbert that opened the scoring, just dinked it over, I think it was Blake Green that put the kick in. Dinked it over, and then over Tabuai Fido out on the wing, and then open the scoring up that way, and they pinpointed him all the time. And I did, in his defence, I saw a few comments on various forums that slated Tabuai Fido a little bit, saying that he didn't inject enough energy and that he looked a little bit disinterested. But I think more than anything, that's probably just nerves. Like, it wasn't that he was out of the game in any stretch whatsoever. It was just that he was a little bit out of his depth at times, and I think he recognised that. So I wouldn't chalk it off to a lack of effort. I just think that he was a little bit overwhelmed with things going on around him, especially slotting in at fullback for Val Holmes.
And the thing that we have to recognise here too is he probably hasn't played a game in 3 months.
Yeah,
these Warriors have now had 2 games to get rolling, granted, with injuries. No Mamalo, no Fusatua. But, the hammer. And another thing I think we have to recognise is, I believe it was said on the Fox Sports broadcast, that his natural position is fullback.
Yep.
He's an out and out fullback, and we saw that when he switched to fullback and Holmes was put on the wing. He is incredible. He's got nifty footwork. He has a passing game, and a pretty handy one at that. He's able to put in a deft grubber behind the line, and he has that change of speed that can catch teams napping. But, I mean, good luck trying to break Val Holmes out of that one. In saying that, I do want to point out Eli Katoa. He was superb for the Warriors there on that left edge, continually targeting, I think it was Drinkwater, on the Cowboys' right edge there. And, one try with some great support play, nearly had another. Dude has a huge future for the Warriors.
Yeah, absolutely. And we touched on them a little bit before as well. Cody Nikorima and Blake Green. Not only did they have fantastic kicking games, but they were taking on the line themselves as well, and it wasn't too often. They didn't try to inject themselves too often. Nikorima, I think, ran 9. Green ran 10. Like, So there was a good option left and right, and the Cowboys didn't know what to do. They were falling off tackles. 25 missed tackles all in all. As you mentioned, sending some of the bigger boys at Drinkwater, that paid off. Managed to break a few tackles out on that edge, get a few arms free. So again, the Cowboys are another team that are incredibly inconsistent at the minute. They have a week where they look really good, and then they'll go on this sort of skew run where it doesn't look fantastic for them. Even with Tamalolo, not at his usual best, but he had to do a lot more tackles than he usually would up the middle. I think that was probably part of the Warriors' game plan. Go at Tamalolo, wear him out, make him a little bit more ineffective on those forward runs, especially knowing that he had that bum knee as well. It's a solid tactic. More teams should look at picking out Tamalolo. He's not a player that you see in many highlight reels for big hits. He's not someone that's going to, do damage to your forward plaque when he does tackle. So if you can wear him out, go for it.
Tamalolo is one of those players that he makes the first contact, but then ideally he has 2 or 3 others right there if needed. And I think for a good 40 out of the 50 tackles that he was given on Friday night, he was that first contact that wore him out. And again, 130 meters, nothing to cough at by anyone's standards. But it takes away the explosiveness that we've come to expect from Tamalolo. And I mean, it doesn't help that the forward pack was a little worse for wear as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Cowboys do coming up this week.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what the verdict on Val Holmes is as well, especially after the reports that he might have to go into isolation after the whole media approach on the sidelines. It's just that was a bizarre one. Came out of absolutely left field with that.
I was watching that, and I was watching the interview as it was happening. I'm like, "Jeez, that's close. I don't think that's 2 meters." And he just like Hannah Hollis is leaning over the fence, sticking the arm out, trying to maintain at least the body away, but still, that's man. We just don't need another reporter player issue.
Yeah. Like we've only just got the game back. Let's not do anything stupid and lose it again, please. Okay. So we'll move on to the Eels versus the Panthers. This one lived up to everything it was meant to be. Real tough battle. Yeah, the Eels going up in that one. You had the Eels, I had the Panthers. I said it. I said if the Panthers didn't ditch one of the halves from the bench, then it's going to create problems up the middle, and that's exactly what happened. Cleary was back. Good to see him controlling the game. I was a little bit. I was 50-50 on that one. I went with the gut, back the Panthers. Bad decision this week.
I mean, we'll talk about my bad decision later on when we talk about Storm and the Knights. But look, Parramatta were on top for about 20 minutes of that 80. They did not, for the first 60 minutes, they played well, they defended well, but their attack in the red zone it wasn't firing for whatever reason. Yeah. And this is probably going to be hung on poor Matt Burton, who doesn't deserve it, because in the time that he was on, he was fine. He did nothing incredible, did nothing wrong. But for the last 20 minutes, Parramatta decided to show up. And it was a mix of Wonga Blake just taking the mickey out of Crichton and just shoving him to all parts of Bank West. Part of it was Moses, really getting the game by the scruff of the neck and taking control. But Parramatta, thankfully for me as a Parramatta fan, were able to get a lot of second phase play, 15 offloads. And I think that was something like 11-3 at halftime. So they calmed it down in the second half. But Parramatta look dangerous when there necessarily isn't a lot of structure. You still have your block plays. You still have your out and in plays with Marnie, Moses, and Gutho through the middle. But Parramatta for the last 20 minutes looked near unstoppable on attack. And that's the scary thing, I think, for a lot of teams this year is you have Gutherson, you have Dylan Brown, who's happy to play second fiddle to Mitch Moses because it means he can run. It means he can dabble when he needs to and support when's needed. Moses, look, I'm not gonna call him the origin half. I think Cleary is the incumbent there, but there's a chance that Moses goes into the 6. You have Reed Marnie, who is playing really well, and if the media is true, could have some backup on the way in James Seguiaro, assuming that his Asada case clears up. Yeah. Nathan Brown in the 13 probably had his best game as a Parramatta Eel. Ran for over 200 metres, had one, maybe 2 line breaks, some beautiful second phase play, I think, to send Wonga Blake through for the second try for Clint Gutherson. Like, that Parramatta spine is starting to gel, and it's probably taken a year longer than it should have. But my word, are my Parramatta boys looking juicy this year?
Yeah, so Brown for me played Nathan Brown. That is played fantastic. That break up the middle, as he comes back against the ruck, he managed to find that gap, and that quick play of the ball is what set up Blake being able to get through on that edge. And that was the big game changer. There was a whole shift in the game's dynamic from there. Blake gets that fend on Crichton, and all of a sudden, I don't know what happened to Penrith, but they just seemed to quickly come apart at the seams. Like you say, there was a change in the setup in the halves with Burton coming on, but that battle down the right edge is where basically Penrith lost that game. And if there should be anywhere looked at, is somewhere between Crichton and I think he's got Mansour outside him. But interestingly, Parramatta came with a game plan, tried to execute it. 10 bombs out of the 11 kicks they put up. So out of 11 kicks, 10 of them went skyward, and every single time they were picking out Mansour and Tor almost one at a time, just trying to get Ferguson and trying to get Sevo on the end of one of them. Ferguson came up with one, but then it came out that he'd pushed one of the players out of the way, Crichton. But, then 10 minutes later, the same thing happens down the other end with Dean Farray pushing someone. It was soft, but then again, we saw a few soft decisions. The DCE disallowed the disallowed try in the Brisbane game where DCE essentially wrapped himself around a Brisbane player. Even the Tabuai Fido one had a case, but if you go on that outside shoulder, then it's always a problem. You got to get through. You got to do that extra yards, hard work to just get through the line. Make sure you're clear and make sure that there's no doubt in it. Because while they're not tries that I agree with being disallowed, some of them, at least it's been consistent. You're not seeing one go up as no try, one go up as a try, and then coming back down as something else.
And that's something that we'll talk about in the Sharks game as well. We saw that with Will Kennedy. But, yeah, I mean, it wasn't as if Penrith played poorly. They defended poorly, 38 missed tackles compared to Parramatta's 20. But, I mean, outside of that, it was a really even game. It was a tough game, a gritty game, a good one to watch for Friday night football coming out of Bank West. But I think the takeaway we have out of this is Parramatta are the real deal this year.
For sure. I think after last week, I was a little bit sceptical because they got a bit of a let off against Manly. But this week, it's kind of put things beyond doubt for me. I tell you, it was a really good battle to watch. Fisher Harris versus Campbell Gillard. That one. Oh yeah. That one got juicy really quick.
Yeah.
They're both they both wanted to show each other up, and they both left it all on the field. So that was a fantastic battle to watch.
Yeah, I think Campbell. This might sound a little biased, but I think Campbell Gillard got him in that regard there. RCG trying to break his way into the Origin setup come November, and that feels disgusting to say, Origin in November. But James Fisher-Harris looking to punch his way onto the bench as well. Campbell Gillard against his former club and getting the win in that regard.
Yep. Okay, so next game looking at Bunnies versus Titans. Bit of a flattering scoreline for me. The Rabbitohs winning 32-12, but then again, the Titans didn't do themselves any favours through that game. Basically allowed South Sydney on top way too fast. After the Phillips semi-try, which leveled the game again, floodgates opened, things got way out of hand. Latrell kicked into gear. Great to see him put back performing at his best. He's copped a lot of flack in the last few weeks, so it's really good to see Mitchell, getting one back and doing really well. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, well, it's against the Titans. Do it against the Roosters. Do it against Team X, Y, and Z." But he's a confidence player. He's a confidence player, and that's only going to bring him up, and it's only going to bring his game through.
Yeah, Latrell's best game. I still don't think it's Latrell at his best. He's still. No. I think he still has some improving at fullback, which is scary. But Cody Walker coming back definitely helped the spine there of the Bunnies. I agree with you. The floor line. Sheesh. Score line. You can tell I haven't finished my coffee yet. The score line a bit flattering for the Bunnies. They were dominant for about 25 minutes in that first half, and that's all it took. They sustained in the second half, and look, credit to the Titans. Coming off a huge upset win against the Tigers last week, they wanted to come out and prove it wasn't a fluke, and 30 out of 39 for 77% in terms of effective sets. They had 4 dropouts. Fogarty and Taylor, I think, are the halves moving forward. I have no doubt about that. Nathan Peets is not going to get back in the side this year, barring injury. Tanya Boyd arguably should be starting in the 9 instead of coming on in the 14. His distribution out of dummy half is really, really good. It's very, very enjoyable to watch him come on. But yeah, the Bunnies too good. They got their spine back. Cook looking as dangerous as ever. Latrell linking up with Cody Walker on that left side. And granted, Cody came out and said that I was a bit out of touch for a first game back, but that's a scary part. If the spine was looking that good, and that's Walker out of touch, I'm glad that Parramatta doesn't have to play them in the next couple of weeks, put it that way.
Yeah. I tell you what's a really interesting stat when you look at it as well. 434 kick meters from the Titans, 640 from the Rabbits. Is it that Gold Coast are missing an efficient kicker now? Because it looks like when you've got Reynolds and Walker that can pump the ball into the corner and really help your defence pin a team back there, it looks like that's part of where the Titans really lost this game. And considering that they kept South Sydney scoreless for 60 minutes, you'd think that basically that they need to find someone that can really, on the fifth, put a team on the back foot and really help the defence get on top.
Well, and I think part of that is too for a lot of the second half, they were in by the time fifth tackle came up, they were in the Rabbitohs 30.
Yeah. So
a lot of the kicks that are going up are Taylor and Fogarty trying to bomb or grubber through from 25, 30 out to put pressure on the back three for the Rabbitohs. So. But yeah, I agree. Taylor's come over as $1 million man from the Broncos, 3 or 4 seasons now, and for for what the Titans are paying, they're not getting their money's worth out. And it sucks to say because Ash Taylor is still, I think he's only 23 still. He's only our age.
Yeah.
But he's not giving the Titans a million's worth. But I will say that I'm almost excited for the Titans. They have a really good coach in Justin Holbrook, and I'm sure he can speak more about that in his time in the Super League. But they've got a really good spine. I think they have a really good spine when who is it that had the stress fracture? His name's lost me. Brimson, AJ Brimson.
AJ Brimson.
When he comes back and you have Brimson at the 1, Fogarty, Taylor, and Tanya Boyd, that's a really young spine that you can build around. Now, granted, they lose Jai Arrow for next year. That's a tough loss, and potentially Kevin Proctor. But you can build around that spine. The oldest player there is 23. They have Tyrone Peachy, who on his day is as dangerous as anyone in the league. He's still only 23. You have Bryce Cartwright, who, again, on his day, and we saw that in the second half, can be a very, very dangerous player. And he's only 24 or 25. And he's been in the league for 5 or 6 years, it feels like now.
Yeah.
So Titans fans just have to be patient. They don't have the roster yet, but I think it's coming. I seriously think it's coming, and it wouldn't surprise me, not this year, but next year, if we see them back in finals footy.
That's a bold shout, is that? But yeah, there's part of me that agrees with that because they did in parts a lot of good things, forcing the 4 dropouts, turning the screw. They even dominated possession. Mind you, it's only by a 3% margin, but possession's possession. But the 16 errors is what really killed them. It just allowed the Rabbitohs back at them every single time. Every time you thought they were coming back into the game had hit the back burner again with a drop ball, an improper play of the ball. Just little things that need tweaking out. But it's good to see that Holbrook. You see a lot of coaches that make these rash changes. A huge roster overall of players into the squad and players out. But it's good to see that basically he's kept in the players that earned their spot. And like I said, I think Pete's gonna be back, but he's gonna have to really prove himself, and it's gonna have to be off the field that he does it to be back in.
Yeah, I could see that. Jared Wallace, Jai Whitbread, I think they're only back if injury happens now.
Yeah,
I think that's a pretty safe bet. Young, I'm going to butcher his name. Fanu Maselli, the Storm interchange player, Tino.
Yeah,
he's there next year. He's there next year on a 4-year contract, and if you put him in the starting lineup with Jaleef,
yeah.
I'm not going to say that after about 2 or 3 games, they could be one of the best front row packs in the league next year. But I really do not want to see those two starting opposite me if I'm anyone in the NRL.
Yeah, they're going to be tough. All right, we will move on to your bad pick this week, the Knights over the Storm. A little bit of controversy in that one, in the penalty that basically killed the comeback. A lot of criticism online over that one. The Knights looked good, but they basically allowed Melbourne to play the way that Melbourne like to play for the first 30 minutes of the game, just inviting the Storm onto them. But second half, different story, better team, but it's too little, too late when you give the Storm that much time to try and come at you and basically get into a rhythm.
When you give the Storm an 18-0 lead at the half, you might as well just pack up and go home from there. The Newcastle we saw in the first 40 minutes was the Newcastle of 2 or 3 years ago, the easy beats of the competition. The Knights that we saw in the second half were the team that we saw last week, just make Canberra look like children. And part of that was that Melbourne just every time were able to get the kick into a corner and charge down and hold Ponga and hold Edric Lee and hold Bradman Best to 5, 6, 7 meter runs. They couldn't break the tackle. They couldn't push through. And that's with a somewhat readjusted spine. You had Riley Jacks coming in, the Canadian international, who is playing his first game for the Storm in 3 years, probably his first NRL game in a similar time. He didn't get too many opportunities up there at the Titans, but he's come back, scored 3 minutes into his, I guess, second debut for the club. Just a couple of small defensive lapses for the Knights that were really 18 points worth of hurt. And as much as we bag Cam Smith for being the second referee on the field now, player of the match for me, controlled the game really well. Had 2 try assists. I think he had a forced dropout as well. Perfect from the kick and tee. Even at 37 and 400 plus games, he is in some of his best career form.
Yeah, it's hard to knock the Knights off, the Storm off when you allow them that much time. They did the simple things right, whereas the Knights was a little too clunky. 12 errors, the majority of those coming in the first half. It just basically allowed the Storm to turn the screw and execute the way that they like to do. Tino Farmasili coming up the middle, scoring a try as well. A really simple play. It's all it was. It just ran a good angle, and an NRL defence should be up to that. Kurt Mann as well, more strife with his ankle. It was a big risk to include this week. It's not a gamble that paid off for the Knights, unfortunately. So I'm thinking that potentially in this coming week, I think that if Mann's ankle injury doesn't subside, that he will be out of the squad this week.
Yeah, look, they were hopeful that the swelling was going to drop down when they flew back from Melbourne. If Mann is out, one would imagine that Ponga plays in the 6 and Tex Hoy comes in as a fullback. Obviously, Tex Hoy came in and played at the 6 when Mann went off, but Kurt Mann, for what it's worth, he spent some time. I'm trying to think if he debuted for the Storm or not. I think he did. Way back when. I'd have to look at that. But he went to St. George, didn't have a great time there, has come to the Knights and is finally, after being a utility player for his whole career, is finally starting to lock down that 6 and be that really good ball runner.
Yeah.
With a handy kicking game as well. His grubber setting up Bradman Best for the Knights' first try. But for the Knights, I hope that Kurt Mann is good to go for this week. In terms of whether the Knights can bounce back, we'll have to see. I don't quite know who they play this week.
Let's take a look. Our good friends at NRL.com have got our back on this one. Knights versus Broncos, quick turnaround. But the Knights have got depth. They've got depth. So
yeah.
I wouldn't worry too much about it. I wouldn't potentially fancy dragging Ponga out of fullback. I don't think he's as lethal in the halves as he is at fullback. But we'll just have to see what rotation they go with if Mann doesn't make it to the field. But yeah, for me, errors, lack of consistency killed the Knights on this one. The fight back came, and then the penalty. It should have just been give the ball back. I've called held. The ball's come out. Right, it's almost simultaneously. Give them the ball back. That's what that rule was introduced for. So when a player offloads at the same time held is called, or a ball comes out at the same time held is called, that we don't have these problems. Sutton, I think it was Sutton, was it?
Yep.
Yeah. In the game long enough.
Yeah, look, NRL Twitter, unfortunately for Gerard Sutton, was kind of calling for his head after that one. A lot of the general consensus was that he's been around a season too long, which, depending on which fans you ask, is great with Bernie still being in the refereeing ranks. But whereas a lot of the referees have adjusted to the 6 again rule, Sutton I don't think has, and it's bad to say because obviously we have to take our hats off to the referees in a lot of situations. But when you have Sutton being compared to Henry Perenara for the worst referee, where I think that might be time at that point.
Yeah. All right. We will move on to Tigers versus Raiders. Raiders coming back from 4-0 down at the half. Really back and forth game. After the first try, just descended into an absolute arm wrestle. Poor Josh Reynolds waited so long to get back onto the field, and then all he did was just get bashed around for a little while. He's a tough guy. He gets back up every time. It's like a Yorkshire Terrier, and you just swat him away, and he comes back every single time. He's after you. He won't leave you alone. But no, good to see Josh back on the field after his media scandal, as it were. But yeah, the Tigers just lost their grip on that game. They had the Raiders dead to rights at the half for me, and just let it go.
Yeah, the Raiders have not played well at all the last 2 weeks, but to their credit, they came back from an early Luke Brooks try to just grind their way back into it, and sure enough, eventually last year's grand finalists were able to get a win, and it's always a sign of a good team when you get a win, not playing your best at all. It didn't help the Tigers that Russell Packer, coming back for the first time in 12 months, just decided to go have an early rest into the sin bin for 10 weeks and then suspended for 3. Real big loss there, if you're asking me, though. The Tigers, in the same vein as the Cowboys, consistently inconsistent.
Yeah,
and it still racks my brain that the Tigers drop Benji. You don't drop your best player. I don't care who it's for. You do not drop your best player. And I think you can see that, for as good of a player as Josh Reynolds is, he is an impact player and a ball runner. He is not a game controller.
Yeah.
And Benji, albeit is at the best of times an electric ball runner who can make or break a game, he can just hold the team up. He can control. He can put the kicks into the corner and chase, and will chase. He can put up those high bombs. Reynolds is more of that chip and chase, or that grubber in behind the line kind of kicker. So I honestly think that if they have Benji, the Tigers win that. And when you look at that goes on the coaching staff. Yeah.
I mean, as you mentioned, the Raiders didn't play at their best. I still don't think they figured out their halves. Whiten. So if you look at the 2 tries that they scored, one of them is Whiten deciding to run the ball. He'd run it 7 times. So there was a stat that the guys in the Fox media said that he scores a try every 7 runs. Lo and behold, run number 7 crosses the whitewash. Good vision, but if you've ran 6 times already close to the line, you've not got over. Maybe you need to look to your edges. Vice versa, you go to the other side. You got George Williams, who sticks in a nice little kick, and Kotrick gets on the end of it. Williams, when he was in Super League, was often criticised for him opting to kick the ball instead of just picking a pass. There'd be times where he'd be 2-on-1 with a winger and just decide to dribble it in behind him for absolutely no reason. But the kick was the right option there. So I think they need to figure out between themselves who's the dominant runner and who's the playmaker, because right now you've got two players that are playing as runners. People praised, the guys on Fox praised Whiten after the game for his transition from fullback to halfback, but I don't think he's quite there yet in regards to his fully transitioning to becoming an actual ball player.
He was there last year when he had the out-and-out game controller in Aiden Caesar.
Yeah.
Now that he has a ball runner and a prolific ball runner at that in George Williams, there is still that bridge as to, I guess, taking their game as a halves combination to the next level. Now, it's not to say that you can't have two ball runners as two halves. I mean, again, I hate to use Parramatta, but Parramatta, Mitch Moses, when he was at the Tigers, was the ball running half, and still can and still does run the ball if he spots an opening.
Yeah.
But Dylan Brown is definitely more of that ball running half that can take it to the line and either go out the back to Gutho, cut it out to his wingers, or go himself. I've liked what I've seen from George Williams. There's no denying that, he's very quickly assimilated to the NRL and should have a very good career in the NRL. But his fault, I think, is that he is almost running the ball too much.
Yeah.
He probably could afford having a run or two less a game and trying to either take it to the line and then pass out to Kotrick or to Rapana or Simonson, whoever the Raiders play on any given day out on the wing. But he's also got Nickel Clocksad coming back on the inside for a potential chip and chase, or the grubber, which in the Super League may not have been advised, but in the NRL, where teams aren't necessarily expecting it as much, that inside kick, if they can have Nickel Clockstad charging through the guts to regather and then have him target one of the corners or whatever, that could be a move that in time will free up Whiten, because Whiten can do the exact same thing. He can then, teams might start to expect it. They'll drop off in the middle, so then the middle forwards can push through, get the quick play the balls, throw it to the edges, and then Whiten and Williams can use their running game to take it to the line and push through.
Yeah. I tell you what, I'm going to make a controversial call here. I think the Raiders need to move away from putting Simonson or Rapana on the bench. And the way that they do that is the problem that you've got right now is Kotrick is at where Ferguson's at, and he's too good of a winger to put in the centre. He'd be wasted there. So what you need to look at potentially doing is putting Simonson or Rapana into the centre, and you drop Curtis Scott to the bench and use him as a second rower or a roaming lock, because Curtis Scott, teams are kicking to him way too often, and they're figuring out that he's not great in the air. You drop a kick between Scott, it's done. He lost the ball on that first try for Luke Brooks, and again they opted to do the same. I think he came up with another 2 errors in between that. So I think Scott out of the centre for me, it's an experiment that's not worked.
Yeah, but unfortunately, centre is the only spot that Curtis Scott plays. So that leaves a slight issue there for Raiders. And I mean, I'm looking at the 17 they used for last week, and you hate to say it, but if Curtis Scott keeps playing the way he does, Rapana played, I think, outside centre.
Yeah.
In Japanese rugby.
Yep.
Do you put Rapana at centre and just drop Scott completely?
That's the thing. Curtis Scott's a good player, but I think it's time to try and transition him out of the centres. Like he's not doing it for me at centre at the minute. So you look at, because now the Raiders are at where a lot of other teams have been, which they've almost got too much depth on their flanks. So it's a case of now you've got to sacrifice either a utility player or you've got to sacrifice another forward just so that you can keep that extra mobility. But it becomes unnecessary. It becomes an unnecessary liberty in the end. So I struggle to see if it justifies itself.
The issue, maybe not for this year, but I'm pretty sure Bateman has his contract through to 2021. The issue you're going to have eventually is John Bateman comes back. So you have Elliot Whitehead, who's currently the dominant second rower. Bateman comes back. Oh, man, I can't wait to watch Bateman and George Williams on the same side. That's going to make Raiders fans cream their pants. But then you have that issue of, well, okay, there's two really 80-minute second rowers. Where does Curtis Scott go?
That's a fair point.
I don't know. I mean, we'll move on, but Curtis Scott has some serious thinking to do, because it may be that, if Bateman commits to 21-22 for the Raiders, Curtis Scott may be playing reserve grade unless he moves clubs.
Yeah, well, I think off the top, Bateman is locked into 21, but I think the Raiders would be willing to let him go just to free up some cap space if the right offer came along, depending on how late into the season it is. But yeah, we'll move on that one then. Before we join the Raiders coaching staff. So final game, as we mentioned, the Dogs Roosters the Dogs game got moved, so nothing we can do for that one. We're going to add that one in later on, as we mentioned. St. George 30, Cronulla 16. That one's got a sting.
That one, well, not only does it hurt for our tips, because who saw that one coming?
Yeah.
Mary McGregor now has a very tough choice to make, and it's one that is going to, I think, decide the fate of his season. If McGregor drops Dufty from now until round 20, unless Dufty has a couple of shockers in a row and the Dragons lose that next game, if I'm the Dragons, I fire him on the spot.
Dufty had a sensational game.
Dufty cannot be a 17. He cannot play anywhere else but fullback. But he is a freak. He is quick with his feet. He's quick with his hands. He has speed that, he's probably one of the top 10 fastest players in the NRL. And we've seen that with so many highlights. Ben Hunt is probably the most expensive bench player that you will see this year. But if there was going to be an equivalent to the sixth man of the year, the bench player of the year, and Ben Hunt plays like he did from here on out, like he did yesterday, he would be that player. I would be more than happy to pay him $1 million to sit on the pine for the first 20 minutes and then put McInnes into that lock, that kind of ball-playing lock role, where he himself is having a superb couple of games, and let Ben Hunt work his magic. I think they finally have that spine set. Adam Clune may not do much in terms of creating opportunities, but he's the definition of a game-controlling halfback. Can defend and defends well. Great kicking game. Nothing flashy. Leave that for Norman. Leave that for Dufty. Just do your job and do it well. That is the definition of what Adam Clune is. And that's part of the reason as to why he hasn't debuted until now. It's just because he is a out-and-out game-controlling halfback. His whole game is around game management. And yeah, you're right. That one hurts for the Sharks. Andrew Fafita should retire. He looked awful out there. If he plays Origin this year, Queensland win 3-0. Fafita is done. Take the medical retirement. And I get it. He's doing it for the love of the game. But, oh, man, he looked bad out there. He looked so bad. And the Sharks themselves looked disjointed. It didn't help that Moylan got hurt. But if anything, I think it was a blessing in disguise because Will Kennedy probably had his best game.
Yeah.
In the number 1 jersey. Kennedy is starting to make that fullback role his own. Should have had a try assist to go with the try. I think he ended up scoring a try, didn't he, Kennedy? No, he might have set one up.
Yeah.
I think he set up Katoa in the 20th.
Yeah.
But this is where we come back to that obstruction rule, where no one was impeded by Kennedy catching it on the inside shoulder. That's the letter of the law. That's the right call.
Yeah.
So it's those half yards that you spoke about earlier that the Sharks aren't doing. Johnson, look, if they weren't paying Johnson $1 million, I'd say drop him.
So this is the problem that I have with Johnson. The most dangerous that the Sharks looked was that last 15, 20 minutes where Johnson started running the ball. It was 63 minutes before Townsend or Johnson ran the ball. And we talked about the Raiders having people that run the ball too much. The Sharks have players that don't run the ball enough because what the Dragons did is what every other team has figured out how to do against the Sharks now. You know that Townsend and Johnson are going to come to the line, draw and pass. So you don't commit on them. All you do is you transfer off the outside shoulder. So as one man's coming across, you then go with him, and all it does is you create the numbers. And you saw that time and time again because the Sharks got to the edges and they found their edges with Ramian and Katoa, and then they were out of ideas because there was no space. Because everybody knew that there was no chance that Johnson or Townsend was going to run the ball.
Yeah.
And it creates problems. It creates huge problems. So the Sharks need to make a decision. The Sharks need to make a decision what you do there.
Did you ever think, you look back 2-3 years ago when Sean Johnson was premier halfback in the NRL, did you ever think that you would talk about Sean Johnson not running the ball enough?
No. You know what I think it's part of it is? I think part of it is the expectation of him and people thinking, oh, he's going to run it so much. So he thinks, people think I'm going to run it, so I'm just going to pass. Or alternatively, a little bit of it's laziness. I remember the first time that I saw that in Johnson. I think it was in one of his. I think it was a game last season where basically he'd missed a tackle, got up, come back into the line, and instead of going back into the line, he kicked one of the players out of marker and then just failed to track across. I thought that's laziness. That I get that you're defending on the outside, but you've missed a tackle. You put the work in, you cover your errors. And I'm just not seeing that attitude and that work ethic from Sean Johnson right now.
Yeah, look, it's a tough one, and unfortunately, I posted about it last night with Buzz Rothfield essentially saying that John Morris isn't a strong coach, which I think is a load of crap. The first 2 games they lost by a combined total of a converted try.
Yeah.
Against, I think it was the Rabbitohs and the Melbourne Storm in Melbourne. So to lose to the Storm by 2 is a decent feat in itself. I think John Morris is the future coach for the Sharks. He needs, I don't know if he needs more time, but he needs the support because all of this, no one knew about Eddie Jones potentially being a rugby league coach until Matty Johns brought it up by saying, you know what, I think he could be a good coach. And then, with all the speculation regarding Mary McGregor, they've already got someone in the wings with Shane Flanagan. So they look at who's struggling the most out of the clubs that potentially will sack this year. They see the Sharks, that they put 2 and 2 together, and there's your next media headline. Eddie Jones to the Sharks. I don't think Morris is in that much trouble. He took the team to the finals last year. I hope that the Sharks give Morris the support that Parramatta gave Brad Arthur when we went from straight set finals exit to nearly wooden spoon in, what was it, 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
Give the coach the support. Sign the players that you need to sign. Get rid of those who you think should be gone, even if that means Johnson goes. Because right now he's not playing like a player who's worth half his money, never mind $1 million.
Yeah.
Find a half who's going to do the job, and go from there. Because they've got Muatalo, they've got Katoa, they've got Kennedy, they've got their back three. Back three is set. Dugan, if he stays injury free, and throw a glass pane down 2 flights of stairs, see if it breaks. Essentially, is Dugan's body at the moment. But when Dugan is injury free, he's one of the premier centers in the game.
Yeah.
You have Wade Graham, who he's experienced. He can play as a ball playing second rower. He can kick from 20, 30, 40 meters out from the line. You have a good, strong forward pack coming through. Never mind your injury for Fifita. You got Hamlin Uele, who's sitting there on the bench, biting at the bit, ready to go every time he gets on the field. Yeah. The Sharks have a good young roster. They just need the halves. And Townsend's defense, he is not a running half. Townsend is essentially what Blake Green was for Sean Johnson at the Warriors. The game-controlling half who occasionally will have a dart, doesn't need to, shouldn't need to.
Yeah.
Just put the ball into the corner. But they need to find someone who's going to complement that, because Sean Johnson right now isn't doing that. And if Sean Johnson keeps playing the way he does, I will not be surprised if the Sharks tell his management that he can start looking for other places.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, the Dragons are going to give me a picks headache for the next week or two, because, as you mentioned, it depends how they line up. Dufty's got to be your fullback, which means Norman's got to go to 6. If Norman goes to 6, you have to move Punt to 9. You got to move McInnes then, and Clune has to stay. Is he steadier?
Yeah, you're right, but I don't think that Hunt starts. Hunt, if you give him 20 minutes to read the game, watch how it's unfolding, watch which forwards are starting to get tired on the flanks, you can then let him go ham for 60 minutes. He was superb. Nearly best player on the field for the Dragons. And then it gives McInnes 20 minutes to feel his way into the game at the lock position, as we saw against the Sharks, to then come out in the second half. He had 24 Supercoach points. I think it was something like 19 tackles and 5 runs for 40 meters or something like that. Not bad, but not great. He ended up with something like 40 tackles, 115, 120 running meters, a line break, a try, 3 tackle busts, a couple of offloads. He's got that small little step that can catch tired forwards out. And we saw that with Andrew Fifita close to the goal line. That's how McInnes scored. Put the step on, slam the ball down. The Dragons now have their spine, and I pray to whatever football gods there are that Mary McGregor keeps it, because the Dragons on their day are a fantastic team to watch. But unfortunately, their day is once every 5 weeks.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to see what next week brings. That's going to do it here for us. As we mentioned, there is going to be one more game that we'll be doing a quick review of, but that'll be tomorrow. So head over to our YouTube channel, all our social media channels. Make sure you see that one. If you're enjoying this kind of content, do let us know. Going to be trying to make more of it. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.